I'm ready and we are recording.
Yeah. And I'm putting everything on silent. Then, no, I've got no notes for today. I don't have to use my notebook. This hair is ridiculous. This hair is ridiculous. You see, like,
No.
man has such a easy job. You are just coming with your clothes from 3 days ago, and you are done. You are okay. And if I have my hair down, I'm looking like 16 years old, so nobody's taking me seriously. If I put it back, this is also a meaning. Man, my life is a struggle.
Sorry to hear that.
Sorry for being so
should,
dramatic.
Should we do the first episode about that?
About
Your life as a struggle.
women's hair, yeah. Yeah.
Should I be with my shoes on because it's kind of informal?
No, this is very Icelandic what you're doing.
Okay.
I think you should be comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Is it okay? This is okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Okay, so this is the first episode of our podcast that you can also see, and this process of installing everything was very interesting for me. We are in the back room of Fractal, workers cooperative in Reykjavik, in Hringbraut. That's gonna be very interesting to hear all the noises that our neighbors are doing when we are not hearing them, when nobody's home.
Mm-hmm.
So everything will be recorded. Yeah, and we set up this this small recording studio today. It's kind of a trial day.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a plan to talk in our first meeting that is recorded about this book, about the book of Mariana Mazzucato, Mission Economy, which is the third book that Arnar is a fan of. You have to help me.
Yeah, you can say that I'm a fan of her work. It's the third book I read. It's definitely, I found it gave me the tools to think about a lot of stuff that I'm working on and with. All three of the books. The first one that I read was called Entrepreneurial State, which is sort of in the discourse of innovation that you're used to, at least in Iceland. It's sort of an oxymoron. And then there was another called The Value of Everything, which is looking at the history of economics and history of how economics has lost the concept of value outside of quantities of money, basically. And then this one, which is maybe, it's putting a lot of things together. I'd say that maybe it's the least enlightening, maybe, for me reading it, but still very valuable, I think, in thinking about innovation and society, which is what I do a lot of.
So I was reading it not from a perspective of a fanboy, but from a perspective of a...
Okay. Well, I'm switching to that tone. Fine. Good.
No. This is a joke, but from a perspective of somebody who is not very into innovation. But this is a book from a bookshelf of this terms that can be hyped up. Both by theory and by policymakers. This is a book from the shelf of Richard Florida, and I don't know, let's go through the concepts, the creative class, all the things about about the progress, about the culture itself, about how, like, trying to describe if in what kind of policy state, in what kind of economy state we are living in. I hate Richard Florida with all my life because that was on all my heart. But because, like, you know, it's putting light on people, like, yes, this creative class, like, you can also be creative class. It's so wide that, like, you know, all the doctors, all the researchers, all the creative workers can be in this class because we are all creative, but not this proletariat, not those working class, you know. That was, like, very, very elitarist and very, like, putting up some certain group of people that are already feeling good to feel even better. And like, you know, abandoning totally the people who are producing the wealth, or, like, producing the value and producing the conditions we are living in. So, you know, I am working class oriented person, so maybe this thing, but...
Well, I can say something about that, but maybe, do you want to go into Richard Florida?
Nah.
Okay, so...
no, but I would, like, you know, I'm telling it in a way that, yes, this is kind of a feel-good book, but with a, you know, the like, you know, moon expeditions missions. You know how to do it, you know how to do it, policymakers. So you can just focus on some smart things. You can focus on dealing with global warming, with ecological issues. You can do it.
Yeah.
And this is, like, you know, feeling good. Yeah, we are so powerful. We can decide about all of those things, program all of those things. And then she's moving the responsibility on the policymakers. So I'm kind of, like, you know, I really like the switch. That this is, like, you know, tapping on the back, describing what kind of economy we are living in. Yeah. And then, okay, now it's time to do something.
Okay. Yeah, it is definitely a call to action book.
Yeah.
So it's a program. Whereas the other two books were more descriptive, this is definitely a program of where she wants policymakers to go. And she is now very embedded into the system of, you know, European Union. If you read the introduction, there is acknowledgements which are like name dropping all over the space, to, you know, up to the Pope, or down to the Pope, whatever you like. That's okay, all right. But for sure, and I think the most, I don't know, we can start there, but the most difficult thing about the book, or the premise, is this move from the moonshot to actual problems facing us today. And she is not unaware of it, meaning that actually these are very different problems to handle. So she isn't unaware of it. She talks about it a lot of the time. But what I see the story of the moonshot being, what I see it primarily is saying, you know, this story that we can't use the public resources or public policy making to change things. That's false, because we could do it there. So I think I think the context that one needs to see it in is in this discourse that you and I might not be in, but is kind of pervasive in innovation, which is the state or anyone except private capital or entrepreneurs and startups funded by finance. That's the only thing that can make difference and create new things. And that moon landing story is a way to sort of debunk that. Now maybe the problem is, like, can we move from the going to the moon to solving climate change or solving essentially social injustices? And she has a lot of, you know, she quotes Martin Luther King, for example, that was very critical of going to the moon. Like, why the hell are we going to the moon if we still have like poverty and all these things? So, and you can ask yourself, like what I asked myself, for example, how come the US state could devise a rocket to go to the moon and back again in 10 years, but then a few years later it waged a war in a very poor and underdeveloped country, which is Vietnam, and then it lost. So it couldn't devise a way to win a war in a country that's supposedly a lot poorer. So yeah, that move from an engineering problem to a social problem is maybe quite difficult.
Yeah, and also she's the data that this book is a 2020 book. It's very like deeply into it, and COVID is a great example of how governments are using their funds, who is using the governmental funds, and on what. That working on vaccine can be also treated as an innovation, and innovation is like this hype word, like all the governments are just like dedicated to innovation, and like there is a lot of money put in it, especially politics of European Union is focused on innovation, like whatever it is. Like we hate this word also, like I'm talking with like from a Polish perspective. So Poland joined European Union in 2004, and that was clear, like innovation, this is it, like all the small districts should be innovative, the whole state should work on innovations.
But see, in a lot of the parallel times, the same people saying the whole country should be innovative, what they often meant was that it should also be privatized, because the entrepreneurs, the heroes of the private economy, those are the ones who can bring a new Poland or Iceland or whatever. And that's a very important part of Mazzucato's project, is saying, that story is false, because the state can be innovative, or other things can be innovative. And I would add different forms of organization, whether it's cooperatives or something else, can be innovative. And not only can, but throughout history have been the forces that have sort of pushed for this innovation to happen. So we can push for going to the moon, or we can push for having vaccines for everyone, or, I mean, this is a tiny, maybe sub-thread in the book, but should be explored more, which is how do social movements push for the direction of innovation? Does the innovation go into massive centralized data collection, dystopias like we have with Google and Facebook? Or do they go towards solving more pressing problems? So I think a lot of the antipathy that people might have towards innovation is also how that has been presented, and how that's used as a sort of a justification for unleashing brutal capitalism on society, because that's the only thing that can be innovative, basically.
Yeah. Like for sure, this book will be a reading on MBA studies, like management studies, and this is good.
Some of them, I mean, depends on which universities. And it definitely is something that's getting picked up. But I think we should also not underestimate how ingrained the thinking around innovation, the kind of neoliberal thinking around innovation is also. Like, I don't think if you go into the ministry now in Iceland, the innovation ministry, I think people would be very surprised when you talk about the state being innovative.
Yeah. That's why, like, this book is so useful, because you can just show, no, this is written in this book of this very important and very famous economist.
Yeah, who's got the Pope in the acknowledgements.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe this is a trick, like, to just putting this book on the bookshelf with others that are, like, Bibles of capitalists, to to present. Like for example, and like I was going to this data. She's comparing how much funds were dedicated to research around Brexit and research about COVID in UK, and this is like it's like bazillion times more on Brexit.
Yeah.
Like how much of a waste it is.
Yeah.
When like also to feel good, the government should invest this money in something practical, something innovative, something that will make this government look better. Also, that was my thought. Like all the projects in here, she's like in the beginning. I think she's writing a lot about cathedrals, like that they were kind of like medieval representation of. I don't know. We can translate it for like advertisement. Right now, like what you are doing right now to show your power, like how glorious you are. Like you are doing, I don't know what Facebook is doing these days, like I don't know, charity campaigns.
Yeah.
But what has something like what is the most visible? Are we talking only about advertisements? Like what is as visible as cathedrals?
To demonstrate your power and your importance. I think in some cases it's like charity and I don't know. Yeah, buying a sports club or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Like a football team.
But also, I was thinking about but building cathedrals is also like based on some like made up concept of like you are doing it like for some higher purpose. So I was talking about like human nature, that this book is also triggering this people who wants to look good. It's like you will look good if you do that.
Yeah, so I mean there's a point, I think, if I understand your point, which is that the book is very if you are working within the system, within the policy making circles, if you're a politician or a bureaucrat, then it's nice to have this book because it means that you also can be entrepreneurial and you also can have a difference. So that in itself is probably enough for some people to adopt it. And maybe they will adopt it in a banal way, or maybe they will adopt it in a deep way. But again, the context here is that we have heard for so many decades that phrase from Nixon, that the 7 most worst words are like, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That whenever the public system, the government, the bureaucrats, whenever they touch anything, it crumbles down. And that has been a way to also justify privatizing things. Because if it's public, then people don't know how to innovate or do new things. And it's become like a self-fulfilling prophecy that the bureaucrats are scared. They want to pay KPMG or some consultants to figure it out for them, who are in kind of nicer suits, nicer offices, more leather, more glass, And it also means that we can't demand things from them. Like, we can't say like we would like this to be solved. We'd like this to be worked on. So I can see the danger of the policymakers sort of patting themselves on the back, but maybe that's okay. Like maybe they can, maybe having a more confident public sector that knows that it is able to solve and change things. These are not set in stone. Challenges like, I don't know, with refugees or with inequalities or things like that. These are things that can be changed. It's not, we can demand that and we can, and policymakers who have this inferiority complex towards the better paid, more swanky, nicer driving cars, colleagues of them who are in the private sector is not necessarily good.
There was also, like I've got a lot of thoughts about, it's kind of like, she's talking a lot about the creation of value like process of creating value,
Yeah.
that it's public.
Yeah.
It
Well,
cannot be
it's social.
It cannot be privatized because, like, yes, it's so, like, you know, what kind of value the, I don't know, manager of the bank is creating himself.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have workers, if he doesn't have system around,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
The same with this consulting companies. Like, this is just outsourcing of, like, you know, they will tell you what people need
Yeah.
and not ask people. And people are so people, like the society or the workers, like, you know, we can also move it to like examples that we know. You can talk about local communities in distant places.
Yeah.
I can talk about workers.
Yeah.
We are just learned from the beginning. We are taught to not be responsible for our own conditions, like for conditions of our living, for conditions of our working.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not obvious when I'm organizing workers. This is not obvious for them. Like, I am talking to the people who are taught how to be dependent from what the boss is saying, what the manager is saying, that your working conditions are given and you have to accept them. No, you are going to this work every day for 8 hours at least. So, like, you have to have some influence. Just think about, you are also a constructor, or like you are also in this creation process of your conditions and of the value. Like, this is very important. And
so I mean, this is particularly in that book, The Value of Everything. But what she is going through is how we have put a blind eye to the concept of value extraction. So everything in the kind of modern economic discourse, everything is value creation if it fetches a price. So, you know, right before the crash in 2008 in Iceland, when the whole system that had been set up like went tumbling and took the economy with it, and people lost their houses and everything, like the months leading up to that, the bankers and the financial speculators and these, they were like paid a lot of money, and they got a lot of bonuses. And so according to the kind of traditional discourse, they are very productive because it's a free market there. So if you fetch a price for your salary, it must mean that your work is productive. But what she's introducing is, no, actually, some of this is extractions, value extraction. It's taking value out of whatever is productive. So I think that's very important because we see this with the tech monopolies and everything. And I think what we are touching upon, or maybe I feel like where you want to take this, because you mentioned Richard Florida at the beginning, so let's just go straight into it, is that kind of, is the working class creative in the system? And I think there's no doubt around that its value, it means creating value. It's, you know, work is what creates value, is, you know, I think. And some of your sort of the kind of face you put on when you talk about Richard Florida, first of all, I think a lot of the people who work in the creative field are workers, first of all. In the Marxist sense, they sell their productive capacity to a boss. So they're mostly workers or small producers. You know, very few people are something else. Secondly, I think a huge part of the working class is not creative in their jobs. And that is not being said in sort of like, because the working people are not by nature creative, or they are like less. But I think that is one of the fundamental reasons, you know, bad things about capitalism, is that it divides from creative to not creative. So I don't think that the person working in bonus, doing the checkout, I mean, now it's automated, go figure. I mean, at least in the, but like I don't think that person is being creative in their jobs. I don't think that they are being employed to do creative work. So in that sense, there is a difference between what Florida calls a creative class and a non-creative class, although they might both be like part of the working class. But that's not a feature of people, it's a feature of the system we live in. So I think the description that he is making of how there is an ever bigger portion of society employed in creative work, and how these people have a different, and how they're changing the certain things about how cities thrive and so forth. I think those that as a description are true. I think his kind of enthusiasm, like liberal enthusiasm for the cities and the creative worker and the knowledge workers, maybe the cult of that, I can see a problem with that maybe.
Yeah, like it's this distinction, this division is creating this bigger alienation between, working class and creators class, this creative class.
Again, I wouldn't make that distinction. Like look at Fractal, the co-op. I don't know, and the co-op, no, not co-op, well, it's a co-op, but it's a co-working space as well. I don't know many of the people here, but I would imagine most of them are working in creative fields.
They are working in creative fields, but paying for their work from care work or like basic jobs, or mostly it's that.
But they're not being paid. Not many of them are being paid
for their art, for their creative.
No, programmers.
No? Yeah, we've got one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, but I think there's a lot of creative people who are working in creative fields who are not particularly privileged or not particularly non-working class or non-something.
This for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, as the economy is transformed, and this is real, this is not just Florida. I mean, as there is more automation, as there are less people in the supermarket doing that thing, and there are more people creating the machines doing that, there is this shift towards, it used to be called knowledge economy, and now it's called creative stuff. I mean, that's just, I think that's undeniable.
Yeah, we weren't preparing ourselves to talk about this, but why I put this kind of example, because I wanted to contrast those two things. I think this division is making more, underlining something. Exactly, I feel that this is something negative, to put a focus on a percent of workers that is not really, because this concept of Florida is putting a light on a group that was in a higher place in the beginning, also underlining the stigma on working class, I would say. But why am I going there? Because, for example, it's very interesting to look at statistics, how many people are working remotely right now. Everybody, all the media is talking about everybody's working remotely. It's such a change to the societies. Everybody's just stuck at home and doing their jobs, and they are feeling so not well because they are not meeting their colleagues, and this is a big issue. But if you are looking at statistics, how many people could stay home because they've got jobs that allow them to stay at home? In Poland, this is 6% of society. 6%, this is nothing.
No. I mean, I imagine it might be a little bit higher in Iceland.
Probably, more office jobs.
So let's put it this way. What's still bugging you right now?
About the book?
Yeah, or me liking the book. Or Mariana Mazzucato?
I would say this is a feel-good book.
A feel-good book?
Yeah. But in a sense that, like, that there is some hope.
Yeah, is that good or bad?
For me, it's like, I'm this person who is sometimes doing 3 steps back when I am talking about radical social change that I want. And she has this call for creating a different type of capitalism, we need a different kind of capitalism.
Yes.
So for me, it's like, just,
That's
abolish
very
everything.
triggering for you, I understand.
No, but also I am this person who is doing 3 steps back.
Okay.
And I know that we won't abolish work today. We won't, solve the refugees crisis today. But we have to maybe name it as people are used to, this is safe for the policymakers. They like capitalism. So creating different type of capitalism, it's something that will hit those people. But I'm more into the thinking of Mackenzie Vark works. It's that we are living in capitalism as we call it, but this is a monster that we are not controlling anymore.
Okay.
And this is something that we totally don't want in a way. But they are if we put it together, if we put those two type of thinking together, basically the solution is the same. We have to build something else, different type of capitalism. She's saying, okay, but a different type of word, and also this is a call for radical social change, which I am agreeing with.
Yeah, I mean, so it's definitely what she's doing is within the framework of what is safe within policy circles, and it's not radical change or something. I mean, she's got capitalism in the title of the book. So yeah.
Changing capitalism, no.
Changing it.
Capitalism.
I think that it's a critique of how capitalism is functioning now, and there is a lot of that critique. It's a critique about how the financial system works. The financial system has become like a parasite, not just of the working class, but of the rest of the capitalist class. So there's a lot of capitalists who are talking about we need to increase wages, for example, so that people can buy anything that we produce, and we need to stop this madness of speculative bubbles and stuff. So it's there is a lot of that going on. I think that there is an interesting thing here, which is she starts with this, okay, we could go to the moon with public funding and public leadership, okay. But then, and she's very aware of this, it's very different to change social things, because then you have not a pure engineering problem, but you have a wicked problem. And we've not been very good at changing social things. So, and there you will start to get into more complex territory, because you will start to get into territory of class struggle, of exploitation, of social tensions and struggles. So you cannot reduce, this is maybe the danger of the book, which we could agree on, that what I was worried about is that policymakers will read this, or worse, they won't read it, they'll just see a PowerPoint of it. And they'll be like, yay, now I can apply a new method called the missions method, and I can solve climate change, exploitation, inequalities with this missions method. Whereas, and I think that's doubtful, because the kind of transformations that are needed to really solve the difficulties we have, whether that's in the ecology or whether it's in the society, they require mobilizing like beyond the state or beyond policymakers.
But you know what is fun in the word or like in the concept of a mission? That it, like mission, it's not income. Mission, it's not like, accumulation of good.
Yeah, it's
like,
changing
and
things.
mission is also like, they like the policymakers and like, dissidents and people with money can put mission on the same shelf as charity. It's like, it's good to, like, I will be good. I will be seen as good person if I do the mission.
Yeah.
And the mission then is to have a proper medical care. The mission then is to do things that are not bringing money immediately. So I kind of like, this is, so if I was talking in the beginning of about this, like, being kind to the people that are making decisions and like, patting their back, this is it. Like, you can do good, you are able to do this.
Okay. So
I kind of like, mission is something that is not bringing money. Like mission to put something on the moon.
Yeah, so this is one of the central themes in her work, which is that the economy should not be measured in terms of growth, but in terms of direction of growth.
Yeah.
And it's kind of bizarre that we have to say this, because if I talk with my children and I'm like, why do people go to work? Why do they do this? Why do we fish? Well, it's to feed people, right? But not really in capitalism or it is to generate profit and to grow. So it's just this that's kind of radical-ish within that little framework where we can operate within. That it's about where do we want to take it. But you mentioned charity. What makes it? I mean, one of the things I appreciate about Mariana Mazzucato is while she is trying to change capitalism, I don't think there is a lot of. She doesn't appear to think that you can appeal to the goodwill of the capitalists, or that to make them better, or to, for example, she mentioned social corporate responsibility. We can have a company, it can be making something and making a profit, so the main direction that it has is doing that, but then it sets aside a little bit of money to do something good. Or that we can have leaders of corporations that we can just kind of appeal to them being better. I read Mariana Mazzucato more in that we can use the state, I don't know if that's triggering also, to kind of lead capitalism into the right direction. That's the project. That makes a bit more sense to me, rather than to have like, Christ-like, corporation bosses or something, So where does that leading come from? Well, it comes from making demands and comes from putting pressures. And where do those pressures come from? That she doesn't say that. She talks a little bit about it, but it comes from social struggles. Yeah. It comes from the class struggle. It comes from the fight of people who are exploited. So ultimately, I think this is what's missing. Maybe the next chapter is, okay, we can use the economy to do different things, not just create growth. And how do we ensure that it happens? It's not by showing PowerPoints about mission economy to a lot of policymakers, for sure, because ultimately it's a power dynamic that's pushing it back. Part of that power dynamic has been saying that anything the state does is going to be bureaucratic, inefficient, etc., to kind of take out the claws and the teeth of it. But yeah, we're back to the class struggle, I think.
Yeah.
But there are tools there that can be used in that.
Yeah. And also I feel like if we are talking about state, it's kind of like she's kind of underlining, or maybe that was my feeling only, that the state is kind of this, like, dumb friend of yours that is taking care of all the projects that should die, and then the state will be like, yeah, we have to finance this because this project is so bad, it's
Explain this better.
State is not focusing on that. Like there was something about failed projects, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I understood it correctly.
Well,
Also
a lot of
because
the
that
times, I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but
Yeah.
let's say a fish factory in Þingeyri.
The purpose of government is to fix market failures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so for sure, this is what she's talking against.
Yeah.
So,
But for capitalists, for example, healthcare is
Yeah.
a market failure because the hospitals should bring profit. Like this is the most stupid thing that but they are saying it out loud.
yeah. So I mean,
So this is not, like, for me, this is not a project that is failing, for sure. Like, this is something that obviously should be financed as much as possible.
yeah,
Healthcare, like social services,
yeah,
and others.
yeah.
But yeah, like, so the fish industry, you were...
Well, okay. What I see this as being reacting to is in this narrative about how the innovation and the economy and the state is supposed to work, that she has grown up with and we have grown up with, and she is kind of battling against. There is this notion that, again, the state is not supposed to be an actor. It's not supposed to change anything. There is supposed to be the free market, and the free market will be the best allocator of resources, and it will make sure that things are done in an optimal way. Okay? I know you don't agree with it. You don't have to put up a face. I'm painting the narrative.
Yeah.
But some theorists say, and this is kind of what the left has been reduced to, well, while this is true, sometimes the market is not the best way. For example, the market will not take into account the pollution that it generates.
Yeah.
So it creates a product and it calculates the value, but it doesn't calculate how much is polluting the economy, the ecology, the environment. So this is, in that discourse, in this kind of lefty discourse, this is a market failure. The market fails to protect the planet. And there, and only there, is the state allowed to gently intervene and put a tax on pollution. And that's kind of like, most politicians in Iceland would agree with this. Like, let's let the market lead the way and do new things. But we will, like, whenever there is something bad, we will make the state fix it a bit. So the state is the fixer.
Or the cleaner, I would say.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The cleaner. And
because it's
and
taking all the
Mazzucato,
consequences, yeah.
Yeah, and Mazzucato is saying, I mean, actually she agrees with this framework up to a point, but she's saying, no, the state is the kind of changer. It is the entrepreneur. It is kind of, let's do that. So for example, climate change, the carbon problem, market failure theory would be, let's put a tax on things that pollute, and then the market will self-correct itself. Whereas Mazzucato would say, no, let's use the power of the state and the wealth and the lawmaking and everything that the state can do to really just, go from these fossil fuel industries, take them away, create something new, invent new things, put money into developing solar. Let's put trillions of euros into doing new solar technology, because the market does not do that.
Yeah.
The market will be, bothering itself with efficiencies. Yeah. But of course, and again, this is maybe the limit of what she's saying. I mean, she's aware of it, but it's the limit of what you can do with a book like this. Why is are the European governments still financing and putting subsidies to fossil fuel industries? Well, it's because of capitalism, isn't it? And the class struggle and vested interest and power struggles. So maybe, I could agree with you. Maybe that the difficulty is like how far can you go within that system of capitalism?
Yeah.
Can you create balances? Can you fight? Can balances against the power of capital? Mobilize, organize, unions, things like that, and then push for those things to happen? Or do you need to kind of dismantle that system altogether to be able to create the missions that you want?
Yeah, there is a hidden message to, I would say, not only organizers, but militant citizens and militant workers. There is a lot of space for, presenting our needs. Mm-hmm. Because, when we are organizing, we are always telling workers that if you want, tell that, your payment is not correct. If
Mm-hmm.
you let somebody take your money, if
Mm-hmm.
you won't tell your boss that you noticed,
Mm-hmm.
this money will never come back to you.
Yeah.
You just have to demand.
Yeah.
And you have to have a leverage. But
Yeah.
this is the second step.
The example here that she mentioned was in the 80s with the AIDS pandemic. There was, the pharmaceutical industry wasn't putting resources into coming up with a medicine.
Because this is minority, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Also, workers is minority.
Not really.
Really, we.
Yeah. But then there was a push for that to happen. So it is not. The missions probably won't happen as a result of enlightened policymakers. The missions will happen as a result of pushes.
Yeah.
But first we have to understand that we can, we can put a man to the moon. Yeah.
That should be a conclusion.
Okay.
Read only female economists, because we have no time for male economists anymore.
I agree.
This is a very interesting book. It wasn't a waste of time. that was my review. It wasn't a waste of time.
Great.
And yeah, I think it makes me feel good, because we are trying a lot of things, and we are trying a lot of things that are not for capital, that are not for money. You activated local, small society and small village to do big things. Now we are still in a small place, making things done, building cooperatives, making a podcast, being heard, or trying to be heard. And that was a very feel-good book. I feel good now.
I'm really happy. I mean, if anything, that's an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good. Then go out and, honestly, entrepreneurial state and the value of everything, they did more to me than this book.
Yeah.
Because this book is descriptive and it's a call to action, and it feels like a continuation of Mariana Mazzucato, not the describer of things, but the consultant.
Yeah.
And that's the problematic bit. But,
Yeah, but also I would preparing to this podcast, I was listening a lot of podcasts with her. It's also very valuable. How she's fighting for her book to be heard. Come back to my book.
Yeah.
I wrote it in my book, okay? It's written.
Yeah, we mustn't forget where the discourse is at.
Yeah.
That she's saying that, okay, here we are, radicalists as we are, and kind of this, but this is actually moving the needle quite a bit, and empowering kind of that sections of society, for sure.
Yeah.
We mustn't be too cynical to bureaucrats and policymakers. They're good people, some of them. Thank you.
Thank you. should we stop, have a break, and then make